Hey there guys, welcome to my movie vlog. My name is John Campea. Now, a little bit earlier today, this is a special add-on video, I guess you could say, connected to today's episode of the John Campea Show. Now, during the live question segment of the John Campea Show, where people sent in super chats, the first 10 minutes of that segment were muted and there was no audio. So what I decided to do was to just re-record that 10 minutes of video. Maybe this will end up being a little bit longer than that, to make sure that those people who sent in questions that they saw me moving my lips to without any sound, now they can actually hear me giving some sound answering these questions. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the first ton of questions that came in. Again, the first half hour of today's John Campea Show was perfectly fine with audio. The last 20 minutes were perfectly fine with audio, but there was like a 10-minute window there with no audio. And I want to readdress those questions that came in. So for those of you guys who saw today's show, now you can actually hear the answers that I gave. So we're going to start off with the first one that came in from Andrew Gifford, who writes, "The shakeup won't matter with the same higher-ups." Now, he's talking today about the shakeup at DC and Warner Bros. We talked about that today. Big, major stuff being a lot of upheaval over at Warner Brothers and their DC film division. And they're changing some leadership. So Andrew's saying it won't matter with the same people, the higher-ups. But, you know, one of the things you got to keep in mind is one of the people they've moved out is the co-president and co-chairman of the DC film division, John Berg. He's gone. The guy who was the main point person for the DC films, Geoff Johns, they've basically said they're demoting him to like an advisory role. So even though like Kevin Tsujihara is still the CEO of Warner Brothers, let's not pretend that there aren't major high-ranking people that aren't being shaken around, because there are. All right, the next one also came to us from Andrew Gifford, who writes, "Too many cooks in the kitchen at Warner Brothers." Look, I know it can feel that way, but the reality is, every studio has a lot of cooks in the kitchen. The difference between most other studios and what's going on with Warner Brothers and their DC films is that if you take something like Marvel, right, they're all heading in the same direction. They all have a unified vision and they're all going in the same direction. At Warner Brothers, what we're seeing in these stories and everything is that it's just chaos behind the scene at Warner Brothers. That you got leadership wanting to do one thing, other leadership wanting to do another thing. Nobody's getting on the same page. They're arguing over scenes in a movie and single movies, let alone their entire direction of their cinematic universe. That's the big problem. So when that happens, you can feel all the cooks in the kitchen a little bit more. But the reality is most studios do anyway. It's just that they don't have that problem of having divided leadership. That, I believe, is the big issue here with Warner Brothers. All right. The next one came to us from Dirk Walker, who wrote, "There's a theory going around that Captain Marvel movie will introduce Skrulls and the Secret Invasion storyline into the MCU. Should Marvel do that?" Well, I've also heard that they're going to introduce Skrulls. I haven't heard from any official sources that they're going to do Secret Invasion. That maybe they'll borrow and cherry pick some story elements from that into their thing. Now, as far as should they be doing it, hey, they should be doing whatever's going to make their story. It's difficult for us to say when we haven't watched the movie yet. Should they be doing it? Well, we don't know what they have in mind for their story. It could turn out that it's the worst story possible that they could do at this time, or it could turn out it's the best possible story that they could do. So we're really not in a position to say whether that's the story they should or shouldn't be doing. Let's just watch the movie, see how it turns out, and then we'll make an appraisal of that, if you will. All right. Next question also comes to us from Dirk Walker, who writes, "Over under 50% chance we get to see Dominic Toretto drive a car in outer space before the Fast and Furious franchise is over." I'll take the under 50% that he drives a car in space. I will take the absolute over that we will see Dominic Toretto and his Fast and Furious crew in space. I don't think he would like drive in a Charger or anything like that in space, but he'll be in space. What he'll be flying, I don't know, but I absolutely 100% will take the over that he'll be in space, but I'll take the under that he'll be driving a car in space. Great point, though. Sam Fisher put in a super chat without any comment. Thank you so much, Sam Fisher. I appreciate that. Santiago Villa writes, "Hey, John, do you think that Justice League worldwide will beat the domestic box office of Avengers?" Nope. That is, again, one of the staggering anecdotal pieces of evidence of the failure of Justice League. Justice League worldwide will probably not even make as much money as Avengers did just domestically. Wrap your heads around that. And there was another interesting number that came out that really staggered me. He goes, after 3 weeks, I believe this was in Variety. After 3 weeks, Justice League has made $580 million. After 3 weeks, the Avengers made $1.5 billion. Wrap your heads around that. That's crazy numbers. All right. Let's move on to the next one. And the next one comes to us from George O.C., who writes, hey, John, in your opinion, which DCEU characters, Superman, Batman, etc., have you enjoyed the most? Well, listen, my all-time favorite DC character, like a lot of people, is Batman, no doubt. And I love Ben Affleck's Batman. But I have really appreciated Henry Cavill's Superman in the DCEU. You guys know I've talked about this before. Superman, Man of Steel is in my top 10 comic book films of all time. I think it's the most underrated comic book film ever made. And so while Batman is my favorite character, generally speaking, out of the DC comics, Superman has been my favorite character in the DCEU so far. So that's just my opinion on that. Next off with the question. All right, next one comes to us from Eric Notagari Como, who writes, hey, John, do you think we will ever see the Sith species in an upcoming Star Wars film? I don't even think we're ever going to see Sith again. Unless they, go back to Old Republic and stuff like that. I don't think, I could be wrong about this. Actually, I don't feel really confident about this, but if I had to guess off the top of my head, I don't think Snoke is Sith. Because remember, in the Star Wars universe, we've seen other groups that use the dark side of the Force that aren't necessarily Sith. Like in Star Wars, the Clone Wars animated series, there was, what were they called? The Night Sisters or something like that. They're not Sith, but they can harness and use the dark side of the Force. I think Snoke might be one of those. Not that he's one of the witches, but he might be from another group that also are Force users that are neither Jedi nor Sith per se. But I think moving forward, they're done with Sith. I do. Maybe I'm wrong, and I don't feel real confident about that. Not at all. I'm not saying put money on that, but I'm starting to wonder if they might be done with the Sith altogether. All right, thanks a lot for the question, Eric. The next one comes to us from Anon Anani, who writes, if Warner Brothers does not reboot, how would you move forward? That's a tough question, man, because I believe the answer is so obvious that they should just reboot. The audience has been abandoning their films. Justice League was a crash and burn. You just got to reboot it. Because if the audience had given up and not come out to support Justice League, what makes you think they're going to come out and support Aquaman? Aquaman was just in a movie and they didn't go watch him in it. And the people who did go watch it are kind of divided about whether it's a good movie or not. So I honestly think the best thing they should do is just reboot and start with Matt Reeves' Batman. Matt Reeves is starting with a Batman. We know he's going to do it without Ben Affleck. So use that as the stepping stone and the starting point for your new cinematic universe. That's what I think they should do. If they don't reboot, I don't know. Just do the best you can, I guess. Make Aquaman as good as you can make it. I mean, Aquaman's already shot. It's coming out at the end of next year. So just make that movie as good as you can, I suppose, and see what happens. All right. Sam Fisher writes, what did you think of The Shape of Water? I just saw Shape of Water last night. I will have my review up for that a little bit later today, maybe this evening sometime. I love Shape of Water. So I'll let you know that much. I did love Shape of Water. The performance given by Sally Hawkins is amazing in it. I really enjoyed it. But again, my full review for Shape of Water comes up a little bit later tonight. Thanks for asking. Brosif McBro, I love that name, writes, Johns is overrated in the DCEU. Glad he got demoted. Well, maybe, maybe not. I mean, look, my problem that I always had with Geoff Johns' appointment was that he's primarily a comic book guy. He's not primarily a movie guy. He does not have anywhere near the experience in the movie industry to be the head of a movie division. He just didn't. So I've always had my concerns about that. Now, if they're moving him to an advisory role, I think that's perfect because very few people understand these characters like Geoff Johns does. And to have him on as an advisor, I think is great. I've just always questioned about whether or not, you guys remember back in the day when they announced that Geoff Johns was heading up this division, I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, he's a fantastic comics guy, but this isn't the comics. This is the movies. So anyway, that was just my thoughts on that. All right, let's see. Sam Fisher writes again, percentage on Fantastic Four in the MCU Phase 4 if deal goes through. Well, I'm going to say 50% across the board. Because I believe, nobody's told me this. This is just me speculating, okay? But I believe there's a solid 50% chance that if Disney does get X-Men and Fantastic Four back, they may have a completely separate cinematic universe for them that does not cross over with the MCU. Because as much as I love the MCU, and you all know I love the MCU, it's already becoming kind of an overcrowded mess. It's way overcrowded. And I think the world you can create for the X-Men and Fantastic Four, you can have a totally separate cinematic universe that gives you far more creative freedom. So I'm going to take 50% on the nose that they might do that. So I don't know what they'll do. I'll go 50%. Okay, let's move on. Adrian Palomero writes, movie Wolverine versus movie Darth Vader in a fight. To me, no contest. Movie Darth Vader. Easy. No questions. Like, Wolverine wouldn't even be able to get within 100 yards of Vader. Vader will just grab him with the Force, choke him out. Adamantium ain't nothing to a lightsaber. He'll take out his little old lightsaber and just slice that adamantium neck right off. So honestly, I don't see there being any chance. I don't see how Wolverine would have the slightest chance in that fight. Unless Vader was taking a nap, maybe. Maybe Vader's in that regeneration chamber of his, and somehow Vader can't sense Wolverine approaching through the Force, and Wolverine can sneak in and stab him in the back. Maybe then, but other than that, no question. No question. The Incredible Hulk wrote in, just put in his whole comment, but John, as thousands of people across the internet scream that. Thank you so much, Incredible Hulk. Luke1234 writes, please make a Star Wars Talk Tuesday special video on your Star Wars collection. Well, to be honest, like you can see behind me, I have a number of Star Wars collectibles, but I'm not really a big collectibles guy. I'm really not. Like, I'm a fan and I collect a couple of things, but I'm really not a serious big collector. So it's not like I could take this camera and show you around the room and this whole room is just nothing but Star Wars collectibles. That's not the case. I pick up a couple of things here and there, but I've never been a collector of a lot of things. I'd be more interested in showing you my collection of Star Wars role-playing game books. That would be more interesting to me, but I'm not really a big, heavy-duty, avid Star Wars. Although maybe I'll just, during a Star Wars Talk Tuesday, instead of making a special video, one of these Star Wars Talk Tuesdays, I'll grab some of my special Star Wars stuff that I got here, and I'll just show them to you on camera. Maybe that's what I can do. Okay, let's move on. I Got a Name writes, I Got a Name, just put in a super chat. Thank you so much, I Got a Name. Let's see, Alfonso Brooks writes, do you think Batfleck knew Warner Brothers was doomed and wanted out? Well, look, to be honest, it's not just that Ben saw that there was trouble. Ben and his relationship with Warner Brothers was part of the trouble. Now, I don't want to go into too much, and I don't want to say too much, but look, we're in a situation that Ben didn't want to be there anymore, and Warner Brothers, quite frankly, probably didn't want him anymore. Now, he still has one film left on his contract, and I've said from the beginning, 50-50 chance he does one more film. If Warner Brothers makes him do one more film, he has to do one more film. But he may not do that, and even if he does do that, after that, he's done. And that was kind of backed up today in the story that came out in Variety, when Variety mentioned that it's expected he'll be Batman in Flashpoint, but it's also completely expected that he's not going to be in Matt Reeves' Batman films. So that kind of backs up everything I've been saying up to this point. So, I don't think it's just that he saw trouble coming from WB. I think he was part of the trouble at WB. And unfortunately, I think that's leading us to the fact that I think Ben Affleck in Batman vs. Superman was the best Batman incarnation we've ever had, and he's not going to be Batman anymore. Anyway, last question that I didn't get to, that was muted out of the main John Campea show, was Alan Gonzalez Cordova, who writes, thoughts on Man on the Moon and I Love You, Philip Morris, Jim Carrey movies, since they are not well known. I really enjoy these movies. And, you know, I Love You, Philip Morris, that was also Ewan McGregor, speaking of Star Wars. That was, Ewan McGregor was in that with him. And you're right. I think these are underappreciated movies, especially I Love You, Philip Morris. I hardly ever talk to anybody who's actually seen that movie. And it is quite good. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like my top 50 films of all time. No, nothing like that. But it's a very good movie. Man on the Moon, I also enjoy very, very much. There's a documentary right now on Netflix that I have not watched yet, but everybody's telling me it's like John watch Jim and Andy. Is that what it's called? Anyway, and it's a documentary about Jim Carrey making Man on the Moon. And everybody who has seen it is just raving about it. So if you have a chance to check it out, check it out. I haven't watched it yet. Hopefully I'll do it this week sometime. Anyway, guys, that catches me up. Those are the questions that unfortunately on the John Campea show earlier today got muted out and there was no audio. So hopefully I've made it up to you. I'll try not to make that mistake again in the future, guys. Hey, listen, folks, while you're here, take a second, become a subscriber. We've got 100,000 subscribers on this channel, but we've got room for a lot more. Become one of my subscribers. Also, click the thumbs up button, leave a thought or comment below. That'll do it for me, guys. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, bye-bye.